The second reason that generosity is genius is that it protects us. Those are the two key words. It protects us. The first is just a pragmatic reason to say, you know something? If you've never thought about being generous, try it. You'll like it. The second reason is more important. Spiritually, generosity protects us from short-sighted bad investments of our time, treasure, and talent. You only have a limited time to go through this life. Generosity will protect you from making really stupid decisions about your time, really stupid decisions about your treasure, really stupid decisions about your talent that God has given you. See, I want you to imagine, if you will, are you ready? A piece of notebook paper. Can you imagine it right in front of me? 8.5 by 11, but it's attached to another piece, another piece, another piece. There's a long piece of notebook paper, and if you can imagine, it goes right out through that wall. It goes right out through that wall, and if you ran outside, it would be going. If you got in your car, it would be going. If you could get on a jet plane and go thousands of miles an hour, you'd see the notebook paper on and on and on, all the way to eternity. This direction and that direction. And then I'd like you to imagine with me getting a ruler out, taking 1 inch and drawing 1 inch with a pencil. And that represents time. All the time of all men and all women who've ever lived upon the earth. 1 inch. And then I'd like you to think about that pencil and make a dot. Just with a number 2 pencil, right? Yellow. Number 2 pencil, a dot. And that little dot would represent about 200 to 300 years. And then inside of that, I want you to imagine a microscopic little tiny, eensy-weensy, little bitty, weeny-keeny dot inside that dot that you can only see with an electron microscope. That's your life. Maybe 70, maybe 80 years. And what Jesus is going to say is that you were made for the piece of notebook paper that goes on and on and on and on. And there's this thing called time, made for eternity, but you've been placed in time. And inside the pencil dot is a eensy-weensy little dot called your life. And he says, what you do inside that microscopic little tiny dot, inside the little dot you can see, has impact of what happens forever and ever and ever and ever. And so Jesus is going to teach you how to be protected so that you do the things in the tiny microscopic dot called your life that will allow you to reap the greatest rewards forever and ever and ever. When Jesus talks about generosity, it's to protect you. It's for you your good. You're not going to hear a lot of oughts and shoulds. You're not going to hear a lot about a guilt manipulation. You're going to hear things about store up for yourself. This is for your good. This is what smart Christians do. Scripture supports this. It's the classic teaching from our Lord in Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, beginning at verses 19 through 21, there's a very interesting structure. He will give us a negative command, then he'll give us a positive command, and then he'll give us a timeless truth. And then after that, what he's going to do, he's going to build a case. He's going to say there are 2 treasures, there are 2 eyes, and there's 2 masters. Let me read it all the way through, and let's dig in together, and we'll learn that generosity is genius because it will protect you, both now and for later. Jesus says, do not, or literally the grammar is, stop storing up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then he goes on to say, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve 2 masters. Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now let's go. And you have a pencil, pull it out. You're going to need it. Let's do a little Bible study together. Notice he says, stop storing up, underline, for yourselves. Stop storing up for yourselves treasures on earth. Who's this to benefit? Who's he trying to protect? Who do you store it up for? He says yourself. where moth, rust, destroy, and thieves break in. There were about three major ways during this time where people could store financial gain. One, styles didn't change a lot back then, okay? So if you had linen or you had silk, you could save it, stack it up, and it became, like your 401k. But if a moth gets into it, it's destroyed. It's no good. The second way that you could gain things is where moth, and notice the word rust, is that you could use metal, and this word is used of the rusting or corroding of metal, but the same word is also used of if you had many barns with grain. This is the word used for where mice or rats would get into your storage, and they would eat it and corrode it and pollute it so it wouldn't be any good. So you could do all that harvesting and put it in all these things, and then the animals get into it and it's destroyed. And then the final one, literally, it says, and don't put it where thieves can break in. Literally, the word break in is dig. It's a picture of most of the Palestinian homes were made of a mud-type substance, and they could dig through while you go downtown Jerusalem or downtown Nazareth. While you're gone, they dig through your home, and you've hidden your money, and they take it. He says, don't store up for yourselves treasure. Is he saying it's wrong to save? Of course not. We'll look at that later. In fact, he says, observe the ant, how the ant, Proverbs 6, saves. Is he saying, is it wrong to have some nice things? No. 1 Timothy 6 says, what? He says, you to richly enjoy all things God gives you. He says, is it wrong to plan for the future and have a nest egg for a hard time? No. He says, it's in wisdom that you wisely and shrewdly plan for the future. But what is prohibited here is greed and hoarding and storing up stuff for yourself that you think will make you significant, or you think will provide security, or you wanting to amass more and more for you. And what's his reason? Why does he say don't do that? Because it's stupid, okay? We spiritualize all this. He says it's dumb. Why would you store something up that a moth could get in, it can be gone, a guy can break in, and it's gone? I mean, doesn't make sense. And if you need any remembrance, anybody have any money in the stock market when the bubble burst? I lived in Silicon Valley for 12 and a half years. I remember the day when everybody was a millionaire, and I remember the day about 3 to 5 days later when a lot of those millionaires, they weren't just broke. The money they had was on paper, and see, that's what the government was going to tax them on. And the money they got back is, I had people that went negative when the bubble burst and that internet company didn't pan out. And things, it can go like that. I've got a good friend that was with a major corporation, had all of his retirement vested, and you would know it, and they're having a lot of legal problems, and a lot of the people that run that company are now facing jail time. He had all his retirement in the stock of that company, worked with him for 21 years. Amassed a small fortune. You know what he has? Zero. And that doesn't happen just to other people. That can happen to you. A number of the elders in our church, when that bubble burst, they had enough saved up. And many of you may have had this experience. Their net worth dropped by 40 or 50%. They were in a position where they weren't going to have to work. I had 2 or 3 guys I knew that at 72, 73 went out and found a job because, tell you what, my retirement plan just went down the tubes because the return on my investments are not what they used to be. And Jesus is saying, if you store it up for now, just know you're very, very vulnerable. That's the negative command. But notice the positive command. But start storing up, literally. Notice, underline the word, for yourselves. Treasures in heaven. Who's this for? For yourself. Is this spiritual? Is this no? Who are you doing this for? You know what? Your faces tell me what everyone does when I get to this. It's like it's not spiritual. Well, we couldn't be doing it for us. What's the text say? Who are you supposed to store this up for? For you. We kind of we try and spiritualize some of this. He says, start storing up for yourself treasures in heaven. Why? It's a better investment. Moth can't get in, rust can't get destroyed, and thieves can't break in. And then notice the axiom. Notice the timeless principle. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. By the way, that's why Jesus talks so much about money in all of his ministry. Talks so much about money. More about money than he did heaven and hell combined. You know why? Listen carefully. Money is the mirror of your heart. Money is the mirror of your heart. If you ever want to know where your heart really is, not where you think it is, not where you wish it was, not where you want it to be, if you want to know where your heart is before God, you don't have to ask if you had an ooey-gooey feeling when we sang the songs. You don't have to ask how long you read the Bible. You don't have to ask how often you go to church. You can ask one question. You can pull out your financial statement and your checkbook and your giving record, and you can find out where your money goes. And Jesus says, wherever your money goes, that's where your heart is. Regardless of what you tell yourself, tell others, or even are deluded into believing. It is the most accurate barometer of where your heart is at any given moment. That's why Jesus talks so much about it. That's why we don't like to talk about it. Because, it can stay kind of gray, stay kind of fuzzy. I love God. You love God. I love God. Did you have a good time? I sang a good song. I like the song. I feel good. I have an ooey-gooey feeling with God. Lord, I feel good about you. You feel good about me? I tried to be nice today. All those things are very subjective. When you start talking about what percentage of what I have goes to God, it just gets real black and white in a real hurry. And Jesus said, wherever your treasure is going, it's like, imagine, if you will, a little dollar sign, can you? You got it in your mind? And then I want you to think of a chain. And that chain is hooked on to a heart. And wherever your money goes, your heart follows. Wherever your money goes, your heart follows. Wherever your money goes, your heart follows. Timeless axiom. So if you ever want to know where your heart is, or are you ready for this? If you ever want to change the direction of your heart, guess what you can do? You can start putting your money wherever you want your heart to be.